BlueFolder, creating a new customer. A new customer can be created easily in BlueFolder by simply hovering over the Customers tab and clicking the New Customer link. Enter the customer name and then the contact details. Next, you want to enter the primary location for the customer. Just a quick tip, the main location, name, as well as the city, state, and country can be defaulted by simply going to the Settings, General Settings, and Customers. By scrolling down, you'll see default values for new customer records, to include the default location name, default city, state, zip, and country. This is really useful if a majority of the business you do is in one area or one city, and you can default those values so you don't have to recreate them every time. If you specify a default technician for this customer, anytime you schedule a scheduled assignment, this technician will be defaulted. If you choose to add a default technician, anytime you go out to schedule work for this customer, the default technician will be offered up as the default assignee. Next, you need to decide how you'll bill this customer. The first option is to bill the customer at the primary location, the location information we entered above here. The second option is to bill this customer by default at a different address. An example of this might be, say you're doing work on a customer's vacation home in Florida, but they live in Montana. They may ask you to send the bills to Montana for all the work that you do in Florida. Should be a good example of using another address as the bill too. The third option is to bill a different customer in your database. An example of this might be if you've got a single customer with lots of other locations that you'd like to actually report on individually or see individually. Here, you would just select the default bill to and the default location. Keep in mind, what we're setting up here is the default. This can always be changed per work order. However, if 99% of the time you bill this customer at this specific location, you might want to enter that as the default bill to. You'll want to enter a default tax code. Again, these tax codes can be changed on the fly for individual work orders. However, by default, we want to indicate how this customer is taxed. If you only have a single tax code for all of your customers, when you go to Settings, General Settings, Tax Codes, you'll indicate the default tax rate here, as denoted with the blue check mark, and that will be used for all of your customers that do not have a tax code. If you service customers in multiple areas with multiple different tax codes, what you'd want to do is set the default tax code for the code that you use most often, and then individually, going back to our customer, set any customers that don't use the default to their specific tax code. You can also specify a labor rate as default for each customer. The default labor rate is used when adding labor to work orders. If a default labor rate is indicated here on the customer record, anytime a technician goes to add labor to a work order for this customer, the default labor rate will appear first. The technician can change that labor rate. Next, you want to decide on how you want to notify this customer. You have two options. One is to use the default custom notifications, or two, set up custom notifications for just this customer. If the default notifications work, simply leave the selections at Use Default Customer Notifications, and this customer will be notified just like the rest of your clients. If this customer wants to receive more or maybe less notifications than your default clients, simply use Custom Notifications settings and click when this customer should be notified. To see the global notifications, simply go back to your settings, go to Email, and look at Customer Notifications. These are the default notifications for customers at a global level. If you don't select custom settings for each customer, these settings will apply. Going back to the customer record, we click Save, and you've now created your first customer within BlueFolder. For questions and help, please contact BlueFolder.